It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. Oh, in the name of God. Now I know what it feels like to be God.
Hello, friends and fiends. Welcome to another edition of Blood and Guts, HHN. Tonight we're bringing you a special creature feature. And we're talking about the legendary classic, The Bride of Frankenstein. And with me, as always, is Frankenstein himself, Matt. How's it going, Matt?
Hey, I'm feeling amazing, man, because it's nice to actually get to talk about this classic Universal monster movie. That's honestly, it's my favorite monster movie of the Universal catalog. How about yourself? How do you feel about it?
I like it a lot. I like it better than the original Frankenstein. But, Invisible Man is my hardcore favorite, but this one's probably number two.
Number two?
For me, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to go wrong. Like I said, because you said The Invisible Man was your favorite, right?
Yep.
Like I said, it's hard to go against that. I know my favorite character is the Wolfman, but I think, like, if I'm looking objectively at, like, the movie itself, like, is the writing, the shots, the special effects, and makeup and everything, for me, Bride of Frankenstein is what takes the cake for that one.
It takes a little bit more precedence over the original Frankenstein just because there's more depth in this one. There's more. There's just more of everything.
Absolutely.
And I know they hindered Whale for, what was it, 4 years or something like that to make this film, and he didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
He did not want to do it at all, and finally he caved, and so now we got.
That's actually one of the things I got in my notes, like you said, because they offered it to another director at one point, but then, like you said, that in the back of their mind, they knew James Whale's the only one that can do this.
He didn't even want to do it.
And this is a movie I've never even heard of till I researched it, but he wanted to make a movie called One More River.
Yeah.
And he used that as his bargaining chip. And was like, if you let me make this movie, I'll make your Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah. But, and Will had a lot of clout, too, at Universal.
He sure did, because he'd already made that, and he made Invisible Man, like I said, so he'd really proved himself on these movies. But at the same time, he said in many interviews he felt like after making the first Frankenstein film that he had said all that there really needed to be said. Because when you leave that film, the monster's dead. Right. The doctor's dead. So where do you really pick up with it?
And he had a lot of clout with, what was it, Lumley?
Yeah.
There, too, was, a big supporter. So
yeah, they
were pushing it. And from everything I've read as well, every person who's worked with Will said, he's well-spoken. He's a gentleman.
Yeah.
He really treats us right.
Master of his craft.
Yeah. So he treated everybody really respectfully. And everybody wanted to work with him on this.
He did, and it's kind of like you said, because he really had to push hard for Colin Clive to come back as the doctor, because his alcoholism, in the research said, had really taken its toll, and it actually started to affect his health, which he passed away just 2 years after this movie was released from tuberculosis and all other kinds of issues as well.
Right.
But James Whale fought for him. He's like, no, I have to have Colin Clive, because his
you can't have it without Clive.
Right.
I mean,
his excitement and his exuberance.
He's the doctor.
Yeah. Like, you think about him, she's alive.
She's alive.
Alive.
She's alive. Yeah, and just his, that comb over her hair, that just. But he had been injured, right? And so a lot of his scenes had to be done, bedridden or
sitting down.
So they kind of wrote that in there. And, that's the whole thing, too, is without Colin Clive, without Karloff, you wouldn't have a film.
No, you wouldn't. And this is like we're talking about whenever James Whale decided to come back, the way that they fit in with bringing the monster back to life and bringing the doctor back to life. They had that great epilogue at the very beginning of the movie where it's Mary Shelley and some of her friends at a dinner party, and they're talking about that first story, and one of her friends is like, I just don't want it to end. I'd like to I wish there was some more of that story. She's like, well, what makes you think there's not? I actually have more to it. And and talks about how we pick up at the windmill and you still see the charred remains that's burning.
Oh, yeah.
And all the villagers are still there. Like, I'm not leaving until we find his fiery corpse. And they're like, no, the inspector's like, everybody needs to go home, leave. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here. Move along. What do you mean everything's here to see?
Yeah. And then the family of the girl that drowned from the previous movie, which is a great callback, he's like, I'm not leaving. And then he ends up falling into the pit. Mm-hmm. And then you see Frankenstein, or the monster's hand come up out of the water.
Yep.
And
it's one of my favorite scenes in the film, and the makeups for when the monster is in the pit, and he's got the water on him. He's kind of disheveled. I love that makeup. You know, Jack Pierce, once again, doing his magic, and I love it.
I'm glad you touched on that because, like I said, the legendary Jack Pierce, one of the things that he really wanted to do with this movie is he wanted to keep the continuity of everything that happened to the monster in the previous movie and show those scars leading up to this point where he'd been burned, so his hair was kind of singed. He had some scars where the villagers were poking and prodding at him in the previous movie.
Right.
And then he wanted to keep that going further throughout the movie to show that the monster's scars were healing in certain spots, but then he was still getting new scars and keeping up with it. So his attention to detail is just for that time period where, like, most people think, people aren't going to notice that. They're not going to care.
Right.
He really took it seriously and did a fantastic job of keeping that continuity going.
And to piggyback off of that, you read some of the interviews with Elsa Lancaster, you know, and she's talking about, how she felt like he was a bit pushy, because she's like, he felt like he was the one behind the monster. And that he always showed up every day with a white lab coat on and all this. I'm like, well, that's Jack Pierce. I mean, I'm sure, yes, he probably was a little pushy. And yes, he probably felt like a scientist in his own right.
Right.
But, you can kind of hear some of the other actors like, he was a little too much, and I'm like, no, he's probably just enough.
Like I said, that goes to show his attention to detail with her, because like when I was reading it said it took about 3 to 4 hours to put her makeup on, and when you see it, you really don't think there's a whole lot going on with her, but she does have these little scars and has the hair teased and everything. But I mean, it's just a fantastic design. And it's iconic in itself. You just think about when she finally first appears on screen, and you got Dr. Pretorius saying, "The Bride of Frankenstein."
Yes.
It's fantastic.
And Dr. Pretorius, a new character, introduced in this one,
Oh, yeah, he's legendary.
Shithouse crazy.
Yeah. Ernest Thysger, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, did a fantastic job playing him. But kind of going back to the beginning of the story, James Whale done a very good job, too. Like, at the end of the first movie, you see the doctor thrown off the windmill, so you just presume that he died from the fall.
He's died, yeah.
So Colin Clive, they find his body, and they assume he's dead. They take him back to his castle to Elizabeth to view the body.
On a cart.
Yep, and then Minnie, the great actress, Una O'Connor, who also played an Invisible Man.
Yep, and she's
such a great character in this movie.
Oh,
but she sees him move and immediately starts freaking out.
She's the first Karen.
Yeah,
she's the first Karen in this, and she really is. Think about it. Think about it, boys and ghouls. She's the first Karen. She's calling up. She's ratting on the Invisible Man.
Yeah,
she's the one like, he's not dead. He's not dead. She's the first Karen.
Yeah. She's first. Like mentioned, she's like the first Karen there. She goes up to the inspector like, we gotta make sure he's dead so he don't kill him. Yeah. Oh, you crazy woman! Shut up and go home.
Shut up and go. Yeah, she's the first Karen. And after watching it many times, I'm like, it hit me. I was like, she is the first Karen.
But continue on, and not long after Colin Clive is revived, Dr. Frankenstein. That's when we touched on Dr. Pretorius. Shows up to make a house call and to move that plot along. He's discovered what Henry has done with the monster, and then he reveals all
He's got some blackmail. He's got some juicy secrets.
Yeah, his experiments going wrong. And just the camera tricks that James Whale employs to get those creations that he has are in the glass jars.
Yeah.
And I used to could explain how they done that where I've seen documentaries in the past, but I know if I'd done it now, I'd say
it's almost like a foreground background shot. Right. I thought where they filmed it close up, but then they had the backgrounds enlarged. It's kind of a weird. And I might be getting that wrong, but it was definitely a weird.
Fun trivia on that I realized today. The legendary Billy Barty from Willow and Masters of the Universe was actually one of the characters. I can't remember which one, but he was one of the characters in that jar. So it was one of his first roles. And just thinking about him as Wildor in Masters of the Universe and the great wizard in Willow. Just that was just an awesome bit of trivia.
I will say that those scenes with the jars,
Mm-hmm.
and then we go into our segment, picking nits,
Yeah.
is one of my things that kind of takes me out of the film just a little bit. And I'm not saying I don't like it, but I'm saying it kind of takes me out of the film. You know, because you got the king and he's trying to hit on the queen,
Yeah.
and she's not having it. You know, and
Then you got the bishop waking up, blowing his whistle.
Yeah, and I'm like, you know, I mean, this kind of it does take a little bit away from the horror, the suspense that was the original, with these little. I've made tiny people, you know, a tiny jar. Okay, well,
and I respect that. Now, for me, I disagree. I'm on the opposite end of it. I love it because I know it, and I know you know this as well. But it's just a plot point to drive Henry into wanting to create his experience, which does pique his interest. Like, how did you do this?
How did you do this? Yeah, of course.
And then you got Victorious is like, well, I did this my way, but I can only grow them so much, and you figured out a way to make yours bigger, and that's what I've come to find out.
Yep, and so. You know, then your plot is driven forward.
Yeah.
There, but that just kind of takes me out a little bit.
And I mean, honestly, too, though, when you think about it, it's a great way that Henry is torn, because he's kind of learned his lesson from the first movie.
Oh, he's definitely he doesn't want to be involved in it. He's like, no,
in it at all.
I'll wash my hands of it.
Exactly. He's like, I'm through playing God and doing this, and but then you got Pretorius just trying to lure him back in, and you see him a little bit, like I said, you know, you about got me talked into it.
Yeah.
But then he'll come to his senses later.
What does he say? My only vices are, I can't remember, something gin and or wine or something.
Something to that effect.
Leave us a comment there what his vices were. We need to re-look that up. But my only two vices are this, you know, kind of thing.
But then picking right up, then it cuts back to the monsters. He's roaming through the village, and he comes across this woman who's herding sheep. And Then you get some other villagers, and they actually finally are able to trap him for a few minutes. Anyway, they get him chained up.
And they put him in there. Yeah, he breaks right out.
Right out within 30 seconds. Then you got Karen showing back up again.
Karen shows back up to ruin the day again. He's escaped.
Yeah, he's escaped. Yeah. Shoot! Why don't you shoot him? And then Rolf picks up his rifle. The monster just bashes him in the head.
And you're like, Karen, just go home. Just go home. You know, call it a night.
But then, moving it right along, it comes to one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and kind of like what's really driving the monster is how he's just wanting companionship, and that's what makes this movie so deep.
Oh yes, this is the heavy hitter.
Yes.
Of the film.
So where he meets that blind hermit, and for one time, that blind, like, the hermit is not scared of him.
Not scared, yeah.
Not trying to push him away.
Doesn't know about him. Yeah, exactly.
Invites him in, sits at the table, let's break some bread, drink
shows
wine.
him his first real human interaction. That's
positive.
Not biased. It's not scared. It's not, you know, it's positive interaction.
Exactly.
You know, he's just, you know, you're hungry, you want bread,
mm-hmm.
you know, soup, you know, this kind of thing. So that's that scene when I first saw this film as a child,
mm-hmm.
that scene, you know, was it was a game changer.
It leads to one of the conundrums in the movie where Boris Karloff, he was dead set against. He did not want the monster to speak. He just thought that went against everything that the first movie did very well. And he just thought if you teach the monster and the monster starts, like, you know, learning things, then why is he going to do these evil things?
Right.
But of course, James Whale had that strong vision of where he wanted to take it, and he won out. And so it's kind of led to one of those instances in continuity where they had to, where in the first movie, the monster had that sunken look in his face because he took his dentures out where he had bridge work, but since he had to speak in this movie, he had to put his dentures back in, which led to him having a fuller face in this movie.
Yeah, and it looked like the makeup, you know, I mean, of course, you know, Pierce did all he could, but it definitely, you know, brought out that jawline. Mm-hmm. Whereas before, with the sunken jawline in the eyes, there was almost a sorrow.
Yes.
And in this one, there was almost, I mean, you know, this one, there's definitely when he's tasting the bread, mm-hmm. when he's tasting the wine and the things, you know, you can see a joy in his eyes.
I love that. It's like, smoke, good. Drink, good.
Yes, drink, good. You know, and you can see that in the eyes. But, yeah, I wish they could have found a way to really have continued that, like, sunken jawline. And given, and I hate to say this, but with today's makeup effects, yeah, they could have pulled that off. But back then,
yeah, they were learning on the fly.
Yeah,
they went, what can we do and what can't we do?
Right.
But talking like that, and that scene just tugs at your heartstrings too, because then they're at the end of the night, the hermit just tucks them in, and actually, you sleep, rest, and you see a tear come down the monster's face where he's genuinely happy for once.
Right.
And then, of course, that doesn't last that long as the villagers come in and say, "Hey, we're lost in the woods. Can you help us get turned?"
You got a monster in your house.
Yeah, and they end up burning down the hermit's house, and can't you see, old man?
So these are all overreacting.
Yes.
Type of Karens here.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, a couple people have been murdered.
It has to drive the story.
Yeah, it drives the story, and I mean he had killed some villagers as well.
Sure.
So
sure, he's done some bad things, but
right,
haven't we all?
But then that leads to another one of my favorite scenes in the movie, where Dr. Pretorius and his henchmen, and you still have Dwight Fry actually show back up as one of the henchmen in this movie.
Yeah.
Is in there robbing graves, looking for that next subject to build the bride. And I get tickled to death whenever he's just sitting there and he's having him a smoke and a drink, and the monster just stumbles in, and any normal person would look up and probably freak out and is like, "Oh, hello! I didn't realize I was had someone here." And just invites him to sit down and tells him do you know who you are? Do you know who Henry Frankenstein is? And the monster's like, "Yes, he made me." And then sells him on that idea of, what if we can make you a companion, a bride?
Right.
And then you see, the moment he thinks he can have companionship, that monster's eyes lit up and it's like, yes, that's what I want.
Yep.
So these, like I said, it's a deep story when you think about it, because that's all he's wanting is he's wanting a friend.
He's just wanting to be accepted.
Yeah,
that's pretty much all it is. Just a film about an outsider who wants to be accepted, and then you got a bunch of Karens.
Yeah.
On the outside, they're like, nope, you did some bad things, so we're not going to forgive you for it.
Right.
So it's a woke culture.
Right. So then to drive the story on, keep on going, obviously they show back up and they're trying to talk Henry back into doing the experiment. He's like, "Nope, I thought about it again. I'm not going to do it. You can't make me do it." So the monster kidnaps Elizabeth and they force his hand. And then it just leads to the ultimate showdown, to where you have that reveal of the Bride of Frankenstein, and like you said, the great Elsa Lancaster.
Classic reveal.
They have her doing, and she does a fantastic job. They wanted her to base her movements on bird movements and like a swan, so her head's just turning those quick little bird-like movements.
Yes, she is very sporadic.
Right,
like left to right. Like up and down,
like just trying to figure out what's going on.
As you would,
and
if you were reanimated.
You see the monster's face when he sees her and how joyous he is, and he's like, "Yes, we finally done this." And then the moment she looks at him, and just, that first time she's trying to scream and nothing comes out, where she's trying to figure it out, and then she lets out that belting scream, and he knows then that she's rejected him.
Yep, and that is the ultimate blow.
Yeah,
and that leads us to the great house of Horror Nights.
Yeah,
the Bride of Frankenstein lives. Yeah, where we belong dead.
Yeah,
and
that's one of the greatest scenes too, because up to that point, he really had turned on Dr. Frankenstein or the Baron, it turned on him for creating him. But then when it comes time, he knows the monster's the bride's rejected him. He's never going to have that companion. That he has that switch, you're going to blow up the whole castle. But he looks at the doctor and says, "No, you leave." You leave with her," and he looks at Pretorius and goes, "You stay. We belong dead."
We belong dead.
And that's so iconic.
And that's your old school Hollywood way of taking down your villain.
Yes.
Where you got your current movies where like let's talk about like The Professional or something. Where he's got the grenades. This is for Matilda. And he blows himself. This is your old school way of pulling that off.
And then kind of where we talked about the monster did do some bad things, but then he actually has a redeeming death, because he's sparing Henry's life so he can go be with Elizabeth and be happy. But he's going to make sure that Pretorius is punished for his ways.
Yeah, gets his dues. Mm-hmm. So I love that. And it is overall a damn awesome film. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as far as, we've seen it at Horror Nights, that the house that takes place right after the castle crumbles.
Yeah, you see that in the background. It's amazing.
She's trying to revive him. She's trying to lift the beam, and she can't quite lift it. No, and she drops it. She's trying to bring him back. So, this whole you could play on so many of these elements, but it's such a great film.
It is,
and the makeups. I mean,
it's essential viewing if you've not watched the Universal monster movies. I mean,
oh yeah, do them in order. Well, do them as best as you can.
Yeah.
In order.
But definitely, like Bride of Frankenstein, it's one that you must watch, and I would say the same for Dracula and the original Frankenstein, Wolfman, Invisible Man, Creature. Like I said, the time, like I said, do as best as you can, obviously. But if you've not seen them, like I said, they're highly enjoyable, and they're just a good way, especially if you're a young kid wanting to sink your teeth or maybe just learn the history and how we've evolved from horror movies like back from the silent film era to the golden age, which is considered to be the golden age of horror movies.
Yeah.
On up. It's like I said, it's just a great way to look back and just see how far we've come.
Yeah, and it's one of those classics that you're really going to get invested in the story.
Yeah.
Especially, and if you're like me, you're really not going to like that Karen. At all. You're gonna be like, can he just choke her out already? Come on, let's do it.
Some other facts about this stuff, I get enamored with numbers. I love this stuff, but like I said, it took about 4 years from the moment that Laemmle wanted to produce it and have that sequel to actually when it came out. So it came out in 1935, so 88 years old now, and like I said, it's still a fantastic movie. But it was made on a budget of $397,000, which is equivalent to about $8.8 million today. And the box office made $2 million back in 1935, which is equivalent of $44.6 million today. So you think for a little horror movie, that was a lot of profit for Universal, and kind of like the monster movies are what kept Universal afloat for a long time and built them into the juggernaut they are today.
Yeah, and they're reusing a lot of the same sets and changing up things just to kind of trick your eye.
Yeah,
so.
That's one thing I'm glad you touched about. That's another thing we need to call out for this movie. That's amazing is how all the technology pieces in the background of the laboratory, they don't necessarily say, hey, slot A here goes into slot B, and this is what's going to fix you. But everything looks like it has a purpose. Like you see, they put the electrodes on her ears, and they bring another one down so the electricity can conduct into her brain.
Yeah.
And like just every little thing, they don't try to dumb it down to make you think this is how it works, but you can kind of see and get a sense of it.
Of what they're doing, yeah.
And feel it's realistic and it could work.
But then you get the Colin Clyde performance where, he's kind of got this performance where, listen, I've done this before.
Yeah.
And
yeah, he even tells me, he's like, get away from me. I work better alone.
Yeah. And he's like, I've done this before, so let me handle it,
Right.
And it's a great piece. And, I mean, if you're sitting around one night and you feel like, hell, I'm going to watch a classic monster movie. It's raining outside, especially in a storm.
Gothic setting.
In a gothic setting in a storm. It's raining outside one night and you got some popcorn or some family, friends, whatever. You want to put this on? I definitely recommend it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
what would you give it out of Bones, Goldblums? How many? 5, 10?
Yeah,
Bones?
5. To me, it's a about near perfect movie for me. Like I said, it's well written, and I mean, my wife does not care much for like black and white, older type movies, but now she actually sat down and rewatched this one for me when I was refreshing for this video, and she'd never seen it before, but she said, "Man, that movie was really good. I enjoyed that one." And so if it can do that, I know it will do that for most people.
It can do that in 2023. Yeah, and just most people, just sitting and a lot of these black and white movies, a lot of these older films, they do require patience. Mm-hmm. But once you put them on and you get invested, you come out and you're a fan.
Yeah.
So, definitely.
So let us know how you feel about this movie. If you obviously, I know majority of people have seen Bride of Frankenstein because it's a classic as it should be. Let us know in the comments what were some of your favorite scenes. Were there any scenes like with Evil Adam where it kind of took you out of the movie or maybe seemed dated by today's standards?
Yeah.
And also, if you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends. Like I said, whether it be dead, undead, we don't care. Share it with them.
Share it with your enemies. Send them. Hey, watch this. Let them be bored for a little while. But do remember, stay tuned for more creature features. We got some more good ones coming up for you, and some more monsters, classic monsters in the future. But do remember, blood and guts. HHN, blood and guts.